Guys, welcome to the Dark Knight Show. So, what we are going to do, we are going to look at the game played by Magnus Carlsen versus Parham Magsudlu. Magnus was playing with the black pieces, and Parham, of course, with the white pieces, plays the move pawn to d4. This game was played in Tata Steel 2023, and let's see how the game went. So, Parham plays d4, grabbing space. Magnus responds with d5, grabbing space in a center. Alright, c4, e6 defends the center. Magnus. Parham develops the knight. Knight goes out. Trade happens. Very good. Bishop goes out. Bishop goes out. Magnus planning to castle. Simple chess going on. h6, just asking question to the bishop. If Parham would like to give a bishop for the knight, Magnus would be happy to get opponent's bishop pair. Parham says, nope, I'm not giving up my bishop pair. Bishop goes back, and Magnus plays the bishop to g4 move, a bit unusual. Hits the queen and leaves the pawn unprotected. Parham could have played queen to b3 to go after the pawn, but Parham plays the move check, queen to a4 check, checks the king. Magnus simply blocks with a pawn, creates a beautiful pawn chain. Very good. Let's see how the game went. Bishop goes out, castle, h3, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes back. Alright, Parham moves the queen back. c5, Magnus attacks the center. Once again, this time, he's planning to go knight to c6 and develop the knight, put pressure on the pawn. Parham's king is stuck in the center. That's the reason Magnus is trying to open the center, because whenever your king is in the center, your opponent's king in the center, you want to open the line towards their king. Probably that's the idea. Alright, g4. Trade happens. Bishop goes back. Alright, Magnus loses a pawn, or you can say sacrifices the pawn intentionally, and here the move that he plays, it's a mind-boggling move. He plays knight takes g4, sacrifices the knight for a pawn. Why did he do that? Because if Parham plays the intermezzo, he would take back with the queen. It's a check, so Parham would never have the time to take the knight. So what Parham does, he plays the check, but what would happen if he would take the knight simply? Magnus would win the bishop, and overall white loses a pawn. So Parham plays this check. Magnus blocks, takes it, but Magnus takes the bishop, and overall in this exchange Magnus gets a pawn. Parham develops the knight, hits the bishop. Magnus develops the queen. Trade happens. Parham wins a pawn. Magnus develops the knight, and Magnus brings the rook. Rook goes forward, attacking the weak pawn. Knight goes forward. The knight was getting hit. Alright, very good. Gives a check. The knight cannot take back because the knight is pinned to the king. The king goes forward. Magnus trades. Takes the free pawn. Blockades the pawn. Whenever your opponent has a passed pawn, blockading it is a good strategy. Magnus goes after it, blockades the pawn, and at some point he will try to round up the pawn and bring his king. Typical Magnus, amazing in the end game, and from here he just outplays Parham. According to computer, it's a playable position for both, but Magnus, just an amazing player, uses his bishop against opponent's knight with pawns on both sides of the board. Since bishops are long range pieces, they are better in the end game when pawns are on both sides of the board, and Magnus shows his end game potential. Alright, bishop goes back, rook moves, and Magnus brings the king. Pro tip, activate your king in the end game. Rook moves there, and Magnus takes the pawn, because if Parham would take, Magnus would take the rook. This game Magnus was using lots of tactics. He was playing for win, and now Magnus gets a pawn. Alright, Parham gets a pawn, but Magnus gets another pawn. So overall, Magnus ends up with 2 extra pawns after all of the complications. Alright, check. Alright, Magnus had 3 pawns. Opponent had just 1. Of course, both sides had the rooks. Alright, and now Magnus is going to use this pawn to finish off Parham. And let's quickly go forward. Magnus gets a pawn and starts to push his pawn. And Parham resigned because Magnus checked and the king would move. And what he would do, he would go here, king to c2 to promote. If Parham would continue to check, not a problem. Because very soon, what Magnus would do, Magnus would block the check. So if Parham would continue to check, king would go here and block the check with the rook, and later the pawn would promote. So Parham resigned after after the move pawn to b2, I believe. So overall, it was super fun. This game was amazing, an amazing game by Magnus. Many principle in action. Make sure to replay the video and make sure to take notes if you'd like to. Lots of principles in action. By the way, I'm streaming a lot on Twitch. I'll drop down the link in the description if you'd like to play me. Make sure to follow me there, and when I'm streaming you'll get notification, and you can challenge me to a game right away when I'm streaming live. And if you have doubts, any questions, if you want to set up chess meetings, if you want to take lessons, I'll drop down the link below, and also my email address is available in the video. So make sure to contact me if you have any doubts, any questions, if you want to learn. I'm a full-time coach. So thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye bye for now.